Hello dear friends. Today we will get acquainted with the diary of a German soldier. This diary was found on a dead German soldier in January 1942. After that, it was translated and printed in 10 copies for further study and analysis. This text is without literary processing, so to speak, in its original form, so this is a very difficult material to perceive. In it, he describes the advance of the German troops at the beginning of the war. The kilometers he covered are amazing. Don't forget to rate the video and also leave your opinion in the comments. Well, we're starting. June 22, 1941. In the morning the war with Russia began. First, we advanced through a 5-kilometer-long forest. Then they conquered 2 bunkers, where only a few Russians remained. At noon there was a heavy battle. There was a fierce struggle for 3 Russian dugouts. 1 dead and 6 injured. 34 kilometers were covered at night. Slept for 4 hours. June 23. At 8 o'clock in the morning we move on, we go all day. We advanced 40 kilometers. In the evening at 10 o'clock we arrived at our destination. June 24. Wake up at 7 o'clock, clean weapons. We start at 10 o'clock. After 10 kilometers of the march, the Russians, supported by tanks, attacked us. An incredible number of our tanks and anti-tank guns are moving to the front line. We are digging in. 2 hours later, our advance continues. We approach the city. It is completely destroyed. During this day we advanced 30 kilometers. At 12 o'clock at night, we arrived at our destination, slept for 3 hours. June 25. At 4 o'clock we get up and cross the Dwina River. There are a lot of stops during our movement. Artillery fires heavily. We advanced 10 kilometers. After lunch, rest, clean weapons. Our convoy arrived. June 26. At 5 o'clock we got up, combed the forest. At 12 o'clock we are looking for shelter from aircraft. We are attacked by Russian bombers. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon we move on, many stops. At 1 o'clock in the morning we arrived at our destination. We walked 30 kilometers. 27th of June. Waking up at 8 o'clock is a day of rest. We put our things in order, inspect weapons. We work all day long. June 28th. At 7 o'clock we get up, we make a march of 80 kilometers with full gear. Arrived June 29th at 8 a.m. Everyone was completely broken, they slept until 1 o'clock. After dinner, examination of the legs. June 30th. Up at 5 o'clock. We loaded onto trucks, drove 100 kilometers. Arrived at 2 o'clock. We rest this day. July 1st. Day of rest. Weapon cleaning and inspection. July 2nd. At 6 o'clock rise, very heavy rain. At 8 o'clock we start, we covered 45 kilometers. It rained all day, arrived at 11 o'clock in the afternoon, slept in the house. July 3rd. At 6 o'clock in the morning we set off, we covered 45 kilometers. Extreme heat, we passed the Jakobstad. The big bridge is blown up. 22 kilometers behind the Jakobstad, tents were pitched. 4th of July. Rest day, put all your things in order, inspect weapons. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon we boarded railway cars and drove 50 kilometers. Then we walked 8 kilometers. The bridge over which the railway line runs has been blown up. 5th of July. Our convoy approached again. July 6th. Sunday. Rest day, clean weapons. We are quartered in a big school. July 7th. We walked 35 kilometers. July 8th. In the evening at 11 o'clock they woke us up, made a 50-kilometer march. After dinner we slept for 2 hours. In the evening at 11 o'clock we loaded onto trucks, we drive through the island. This city is completely destroyed. July 9th. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon we arrived at our destination, drove 150 kilometers in trucks. 3 kilometers from the opponents, we unloaded, quickly cleaning weapons. At 3 o'clock in the morning the attack of the nearest village. Heavy fighting, occupied 2 villages by 7 o'clock. 1 dead, 4 injured. We sleep in the trenches at night. July 10th. Up at 2 o'clock. We move forward, then there was a battle, they captured the railway station. Smoke ammunition was used here. The Russians retreated leaving motorcycles, cars, trucks and guns. These were our trophies. Deadly tired, slept for 3 hours in a ravine. Now we have a lot of sugar and butter. After dinner at 3 o'clock the second fight. Only the 5th Company with artillery and anti-tank guns took part in it. We walked 8 kilometers. First of all, the whole village was burned to the ground. We forded the river waist deep in water. They fired a lot of ammunition. The Russians are coming over to us, their morale is broken. At 9 o'clock in the morning we return back to the railway station. We are exposed to air raids at night. July 11th. We rest on this day. We put all our things in order. 100 Russians were captured that day. July 12. Before lunch we rest, after lunch at 5 o'clock we perform, we walk 20 kilometers. Very bad stretch of road. Settled in a small village. July 13th. We are preparing carts for the trip. Scattered and broken remnants of the Russians constantly roam around us. Until the 11th of July we had 6 dead and 12 wounded. The 14th of July. Day of rest. July 15th. Day of rest. They wanted to load us into trucks, but the trucks did not arrive. July 16th. We rest until lunch. After lunch at 8 o'clock in the evening we leave in trucks and leave for the highway. July 17th. In the morning at 11 o'clock we arrived at our destination, drove 150 kilometers. Then they ran for 3 kilometers, lay down in the forest. 2 kilometers ahead is a fierce battle, this time we are in reserve. July 18th. At night they slept in anti-tank ditches. Every day we stand in the field guard. July 19th. At 5 o'clock in the morning alarm, everything is on alert. Before lunch they were still in the forest, after lunch they set up posts on the edge of the forest, as Russian tanks were advancing. July 20th. We got up at 5 o'clock, set out immediately, and returned 5 kilometers back. We hide in the bush. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon we drove 30 kilometers in the opposite direction in trucks, unloaded and dug in the meadow. July 21st. At 1 o'clock in the morning we got up, at 3 o'clock the fire of our artillery began. A fierce battle went on all day, many losses on both sides. We have 6 dead and 15 wounded. In the evening we dug in again. July 22nd. Rest day, we clean weapons at the field wagons. The Russians begin a new artillery barrage. Direct hit on the wagon. After lunch, the offensive again, ordered to occupy the nearest village. Combat readiness at the edge of the forest. The Russians made a colossal fire raid with artillery, anti-tank guns, and all heavy weapons. We immediately dig in. That night we stayed here, but that same night the Russians withdrew. July 23rd. At 6 o'clock in the morning we move on, the enemy has left the village. Here he built the strongest fortifications. Upon arrival in the village, we immediately set up field guards. After lunch we walked 7 kilometers in the opposite direction. Then they were loaded into trucks and returned back to their battalion, which was located in the same place. That night we slept in tents. July 24th. Up at 8 o'clock. Resting, swimming, washing clothes. All this before lunch. After lunch at 2 o'clock we set out for 10 kilometers. Upon arrival, we immediately dig in, the strongest artillery fire. Because of this, 3 people died, it was a direct hit. July 25th. At 4 o'clock in the morning we set out, advanced 12 kilometers. 5th Company in reserve. After lunch we went to the outpost. 1 dead. In the evening we stormed the village. At 9 o'clock in the evening the Russians attacked us with the support of tanks. A terrible mess. The tanks have been destroyed. July 26th. At 1 o'clock in the morning again in the outposts, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon our dinner was brought to us. July 27th. Field guard, we are a kilometer from the Russians. After lunch, the Russians again retreat with their tanks. In the evening we blow up another church. July 28th. We're in the field guard. At 8 o'clock in the evening they went on reconnaissance, while running into the enemy. July 29th. Field guard, again went to reconnaissance from the 5th Company. The old village was again occupied by the enemy, 2 were captured. At 8 o'clock in the evening we set out for the next village. But the enemy is there, and we will dig ourselves in front of the village. July 30th. At 4 in the morning we advance with the support of 6 tanks, the enemy retreats. 45 Russians were captured. Stayed where they were until lunchtime. Russian artillery fires again, we dug in. I am participating in reconnaissance in the next village, there are scattered parts of the enemy. At 4 in the morning 2 battalions set out, someone stepped on a mine, 1 dead. In the evening we received letters. July 31st. We rest until lunch, after lunch at 2 o'clock we set off, we walk 10 kilometers along narrow roads in the bushes. In the evening we pitched tents. August 1st. In the morning at 8 o'clock, we get up, put our things in order. After lunch at 4 o'clock we set off. The 7th Company is located 7 kilometers from us, the enemy is also located there. The strongest artillery fire. August 2nd. There is a guard in the field, we cannot even move in the trenches, the Russians immediately open artillery fire. The kitchen turned back before reaching us because of the strongest artillery shelling. August 3rd. In the morning the Russians attack us with tank support, but they are beaten off. We have 1 wounded. August 4th. At 12 o'clock at night, the Russians again begin shelling our positions with all types of weapons. They leave at 2 o'clock. At 4 o'clock our 2 squads go on reconnaissance. The Russians are great at chasing us, surrounding us and firing at us with machine gun fire. We have 1 wounded. During the day, artillery shelling again. 5th of August. At 12 o'clock in the morning the Russians advance again, but their attack is beaten off, and they again cover our positions with heavy artillery fire. Because of this we have 4 dead and 2 wounded. At 9 o'clock in the evening the police division relieves us, we return 10 kilometers to the rear. Until the 9th of August. We're in the field guard. 10th of August. On this day, a general attack on the meadows was to take place. We had to walk 15 kilometers to the river. At 3 o'clock in the morning rise, the beginning of the march at 5 o'clock. The 2nd Battalion in reserve, walked 8 kilometers and dug in the forest. 1 dead. At 10 o'clock in the evening we return back, at 1 o'clock we arrived at our destination, having traveled a distance of 10 kilometers. August 11th. Wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Let's go, we walked 10 kilometers. We dug in the forest, in an open place we came under heavy artillery fire. The strongest rain, the strongest artillery fire. She breaks the dugout, this is a direct hit. Everything is mined in front of the dugout. Our battalion is moving forward. We lay down in the nearest ravine, we were fired upon by our own artillery. This was the reason for our great losses, as well as the losses of the nearest companies. Our company lost 3 people. August 13th. At 12 o'clock at night, the Russians, supported by tanks, advance again. Under the cover of tanks, infantry marches and fires armor-piercing incendiary bullets. Strong fire. 6 tanks were destroyed, we have 1 dead. At noon we advance, our artillery opens heavy fire. It looks like a wild fiery dance. We walk forward, many dead Russians lying in the forest, in dugouts. Many captured Russian soldiers. August 14th. Let's move on to the next village. Our planes are dropping bombs, our artillery is preparing artillery. The enemy withdraws. Further, we occupy the village, the 6th Company, which had the hardest battle of the evening, remains in guard. We return to our company. August 15th. Day of rest. At noon we go to reconnaissance, we were fired upon. We are 1 kilometer from the Russians and open crazy fire. In the evening, The Russians advance in the sector of 2 companies, they are led up to 50 meters and open fire. Victory! At the same time, many Russian soldiers were captured. August 16th. We are building trenches. 100 meters ahead of us is a forest. We arrange real dugouts. August 17th. We improve the construction and equipment of dugouts. August 18th and 19th. We stand on the defensive, every day we go to reconnaissance. In the next village, located 2 kilometers from us, there are Russians. They also build dugouts and bunkers. We are on the defensive until the 24th of August. We often go on reconnaissance to Russian positions. They tried to attack us several times, but their attacks were always repulsed. August 24th. Offensive. At 10 o'clock in the morning, our artillery was preparing artillery, and the Russians left the village at night, that same night. We crossed the river on the old bridge, it is mined. 1 person died. We walk another 15 kilometers to our destination. We do not reach it, because the Russians have installed blockages everywhere. We stay in the forest for the night. Terrible cold, plus rain. 25th of August. At 4 o'clock in the morning we go further, we approach the bridge, it is blown up. The infantry fords the river, carts and motor vehicles remain in the village. The 2nd platoon goes on reconnaissance to the village, discovers the enemy behind the village. Some of the civilian population want to hide, to escape. But when they notice that we will do them no harm, they stay. An hour later they blew up the bridge. We go to another village, to the railway station, there are 2 factories there. In the evening we catch chickens, cut them up and boil potatoes, because for 3 days now we have not seen any field kitchen and get food ourselves. August 26th. Day of rest. We put up guards. 400 meters from us, on the other side of the Luga River, there are Russian positions. The Russians build their dugouts just at the edge of the forest. The Russians advance on the site of another regiment, but their attack is repulsed. August 27th. We're going across the river. At 6 o'clock in the morning we were brought food and hot food. At 9 o'clock our artillery opens heavy fire. First of all, the 6th and 7th companies are transported to the other side on rafts. During the crossing, they have terrible losses. The Russians are firing from all sides, they have the ability to shell the entire river. Our company was supposed to help transport anti-tank and infantry guns to the other side, but we could not reach the opposite shore safely, our boat capsized. Up to our necks in the water, we strive to climb the shore, our heavy machine gun covers the crossing. The first cross safely, we shoot just from the place where the crossing is being carried out. Suddenly, our heavy machine gun is suppressed by our own artillery. The artillery fired another shot at our position, several of us were wounded. Then I jump up and run back knee-deep in water. At this time, I got a fragment in the lower part of the leg. My comrades bandaged me. I jumped into the boat and safely reached our shore, where they bandaged me more thoroughly. There are already many wounded here. We lay there for 4 hours, and the doctor did not appear. 4 hours later, a doctor came, and we were finally taken to the rear. The fire of the Russians weakened a little. We arrived at the collection point and an hour later ambulances arrived, and we are going to the main dressing station. There we were cut again, and we remained here until the next morning. Then we are quickly taken in ambulances to the railway station, from where we go to Pskov, where we stay for another day. After that, we leave for Riga, where we spend 2 more days, here we are well fed. On September 2, 1941, our train to Germany begins, we go through Königsberg and Berlin. We spend 1 night in Magdeburg. The next morning I was sent to the emergency hospital. He spent 5 weeks in the hospital, 3 weeks was on leave for the final recovery, and another 5 weeks he was in the reserve battalion of the 2nd Company. December 8, 1941. I am going again to my old division in the direction of Petersburg along the route, Berlin, East Prussia, Königsberg, Riga, Pskov, Petersburg. At 7 o'clock in the morning I left for the old division. 20th of December. I arrived at the station. We unloaded from the car and walked 20 kilometers. We slept in a military hospital, in a large building. December 21st. We walked 25 kilometers, past Krasnogvardisk. The divisional headquarters and rear services are located in the houses. Our division has been transferred in the direction of Schlisselburg to Lake Ladoga. December 22nd and 23rd. Both days they put all their belongings and weapons in order. December 24th, 1941. Getting ready for Christmas. Christmas evening was celebrated together with artillery workers. December 25th. Moved to another apartment. December 26th. Christmas joys, we received gifts, a bottle of wine, a small bar of chocolate, cakes, 3/4 of vodka, but we all had to pay for this ourselves. 27th of December. Tactical exercises before lunch. I was given the rank of non-commissioned officer. December 28th. Getting a salary. The 29th and the 30th of December. There are many different rumors. Some say that our division will be replaced by another unit, others say that the division will be assigned to the construction of winter quarters, others say that we will be withdrawn to the rear. We will set out on January 1st with full equipment and will have to walk 120 kilometers, 25 kilometers every day. But so far, nothing definite is known. January 1st, 1942. Packed all their things, everything is in order. January 2nd. At 8 o'clock in the morning we set out, arrived at 12 o'clock, walked 15 kilometers. It was very cold, 2 people got frostbite on their hands. January 3rd. We walked 25 kilometers. January 4th. We walked 20 kilometers. January 5th. Day of rest. Disgusting apartments, everywhere women sleep. January 6th. We walked 15 kilometers, arrived in the city of Tosno. Settled in a nice apartment. January 7th. We walked another 22 kilometers, our division is here. January 8th. We went to our regiment, walked 20 kilometers, then slept. At 9 o'clock in the evening the company arrived. The company had just a special building. The whole company sleeps in one house, 40 people remained in the company. January 9th. Up at 8 o'clock. We clean weapons, put things in order. At 11 o'clock the battalion commander came to us, we were all immediately lined up. Then food was distributed. At 2 o'clock we set out, walked through the forest, arrived at 5 o'clock. We changed another regiment, settled in small dugouts, where you can't even move. January 10th. They fired all night and all day. The Russians did exactly the same, from time to time several shots. Every 5 hours, you again have to go to the next shift and outpost. Our posts and eavesdropping posts are 100 meters ahead of us in the forest. January 11th. The same picture. Fired 1,000 shots today. January 12th. The same picture. 13th of January. Russian artillery and mortars are firing at our positions, apparently they are preparing to attack. But it doesn't get to that point. January 14th. The same picture. In the morning a strong reconnaissance detachment in camouflage robes creeps up to us. One of them was already 10 meters from our dugout, but we shot him with a machine gun and threw hand grenades at him. We shot 6 Russians in total. After lunch it gets a little quieter. January 15th. The Russians are crawling up to our positions again, but they were quickly discovered, they shot 2 people. January 16th. In the morning, the Russians attacked again, but this time without camouflage robes. They managed to approach approximately to the edge of the forest. The Russians are shooting at our machine gun positions, 1 machine gun post has been destroyed. The Russians are retreating. This evening I am transferred to the 1st Department, as the 1st number. January 17th. At 2 o'clock in the morning the Russians attack again, one of them fires at our pillbox from a distance of 5 meters. But they scare him away and he leaves. The Russians are shooting from the forest from a distance of 50 meters. We're firing flares, we're running out of ammo. The machine gun fails, but in the end the Russians come under heavy fire and retreat at 5 o'clock. January 18th. All night the Russians make their way to our positions, but we keep pushing them back with our machine gun fire. In the morning, at 8 o'clock, they still break through. We were forced to leave the firing position of our machine gun. We had to leave our bunker as well. The Russians bombard our positions with hand grenades and explosive packages, but still